present the song this morning, I'd like to give you a little background that hopefully will aid your understanding of the message. I don't mean to make this into a Bible study, but I know Tom will indulge me, and I hope you will too. It won't take long. First, I'd like to say a word about the King James translation. There are criticisms of it, often with merit. But for a one-time English teacher with a love for the language itself, there's music in it which draws me. As a kid growing up in a very musical family, I heard classical sacred music from earliest memory, and virtually all of it was in the King James translation. So there's a certain comfort, a grounding in the King James for me personally. We know that Jesus' parables, found mainly in the Gospel of Luke, the physician, were short stories, couched in terms even the simplest of his followers could relate to. They carried profound messages that still resonate today. However, since they were couched in the simple common language of that historical time, we can be distracted by the words sometimes, particularly in the King James, and the meanings are not always clear to us. 2 weeks ago, Tom's message was about the Beatitudes, and last Sunday it was about the Lord's Prayer. Both are parts of Sermon on the Mount, which is found in Matthew chapters 5 through 7. We heard many aspects of the Lord's Prayer, some that were probably unknown. I know it gave me fresh perspective. One thing he discussed is a constant theme in the teachings of Jesus. Don't be ostentatious about your religion, because that is not God's way. The parable of the publican, which is found in Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14, speaks directly to this. In fact, as I listened to Tom talk last week, I couldn't help thinking about this parable, knowing that I was going to be presenting it to you today. Before I address the parable of the publican, however, I'd like to mention one other part of the Sermon on the Mount that also directly addresses this concept. It follows the Beatitudes and immediately precedes the Lord's Prayer. Incidentally, this passage that I'm about to read to you was the inspiration for a tremendous pair of books written by a fellow named Lloyd C. Douglas, who wrote The Robe and The Shoes of the Fisherman. These books were Magnificent Obsession and Dr. Hudson's Secret Journal. They're based on Matthew 6. Okay, from the Revised Standard Version, Matthew 6, chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. Beware of practicing your piety before men in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, when you give alms, sound no trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms may be in secret, and your Father, who sees in secret, will reward you. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father, who sees in secret, will reward you. And in praying, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Chuck Wood brought that point up last Sunday in connection with Tom's discussion. And then the Lord's Prayer follows in Matthew 6, chapter 6, verse 9. Now for the parable of the publican. As most of you know, a publican in those days was a tax collector. They worked on commission, sort of an independent contractor to the Roman government. The more successful they were, the better their standard of living. Zacchaeus was a publican. It was he who climbed the tree that he might better see Jesus, fell out of the tree at Jesus' feet, and then entertained Jesus in his home that evening. Publicans were despised as traitors. They were the dregs of society, the lowest of the low, lower even than insurance agents and used car salesmen. The Pharisee, on the other hand, was a pinnacle of Jewish society at that time, upper class, wealthy, scholars, teachers, interpreters of the Torah. They were respected as almost noblemen. As a result, they were often haughty and self-serving. We might call them elitists today. So the setup here is to compare the lowest in society to the highest. In the parable, the point of view changes 6 times, which can be a little confusing, which is why I'm telling you about this. First, we have Jesus setting the stage. And he says this. He says, 2 men went up into the temple to pray. And literally they went up because the temple was on the highest hill in Jerusalem, Temple Mount. There were lots of steps you had to go up. One was a Pharisee and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus, within himself. And what that means is full of himself, me-centered. Next we hear the Pharisee's prayer. God, I thank thee that I am not as other men. That is, I'm better than them. I am above them. Extortioners, unjust, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. Then Jesus speaks again and introduces the publican. But the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes into heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, and we hear the publican's prayer. It's very short. God be merciful to me, a sinner. Jesus then drives home the message. I tell you, this man, that is the publican, went down to his house justified rather than the other, the Pharisee. For he that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. And then the last shift of point of view in the song goes back to the composer and therefore the soloist, who echoes